But why would the supreme leader of Iran, a country that talks about civilizational links with India, make such a comment? Let's try and make sense of these comments. Joining me on this special broadcast, our Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former Indian Ambassador to Iran. Zeenat Shaukat Ali is the founder director of Wisdom Foundation, and Sushant Sareen is a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. All our guests are domain experts. And Sushant Sareen, I want to begin by asking you, what do you make of Imam Khamenei's comments clubbing India with Gaza and Myanmar and silent on atrocities that Muslims face in countries like China, for example?
Yeah, but as an aside, let me just first start by saying that he was talking about Muslim unity. There are many Muslims who would not even consider Khamenei a Muslim because of his sect. So for him to, talk about Muslims all over the world, I think that's rather rich coming from a guy like him. Now, look, you could either attribute this to his being senile, but I don't think that's a correct explanation. I think the Iranians have become past masters at playing good cop and bad cop. So Khamenei, not for the first time, has played bad cop when it comes to India, and Iran has had a very dubious role to play inside India. They've incited violence among the Shias in India. They have been involved in terrorism in India. During the bad days in Kashmir, they were involved with the Shia militias in Kashmir as well. And they have felt that it's their God-given goddamn right to comment on India's affairs without any pushback. Personally, I think the pushback which has come today is probably not good enough. It could have been much harsher and should have been much harsher than what we have. We've always kind of downplayed it. For example, they were involved in terrorism. We downplayed it. We tried to, brush everything under the carpet because we didn't want our relations with Iran to get spoiled. Now, the state of relationship is complex, which is why when he plays bad cop, the government in Iran, which is basically a puppet, plays the good cop. So, you will not see Iranian ministers or you will not see Iranian officials take the same line. They will take a much softer line vis-a-vis India. But I think this kind of a double game which the Iranians and many of these countries practice, I don't see how this can be acceptable to a self-respecting country like India.
Oh, absolutely. And not in the 21st century, not in today's world. Iran cannot indulge in any more double-speak. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, you've been our ambassador to Iran. India's always sought good relationship with Iran, talked about that civilizational relationship. Shias perhaps are safest in India. In any country in the world, perhaps they're safest in India. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh pointed out that India is the only country where all 72 firqas or sects of Islam, people live in harmony. What do you make of such a statement coming from Imam Khamenei, sir?
Such a statement can only come from someone like Imam Khamenei. No other Muslim country like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, Morocco, Egypt, none of these, which are major Islamic countries and big players on the international arena, they have never said anything detrimental to our interests in this fashion. They have never commented adversely on the condition of Muslims. Khamenei has been notorious in this respect. He has made statements which are very, very obnoxious on a number of occasions. And as Mr. Sushant Sareen said, our reactions have been rather mild. Even on this occasion, while we have said that Iran should look at their own situation, their own record, before making observations about others. But the fact is that we should have been perhaps more harsh in conveying our message. And we should have been specific in what we see as highly objectionable in terms of human rights, which happens in Iran. We have been too nice where Iran is concerned. We have invested money in that Chabahar port. I think this is misplaced investment. Iran can never be a reliable ally.
Look at the way Sunnis treat Shias in Pakistan. He doesn't utter a word. Look at the way China treats its Uyghur Muslims. Not a word. But Zeenat Shaukat Ali, what do you make of this, ma'am? Because India is perhaps the only country in the world where Shias and Sunnis live in perfect harmony. After decades, Shias were able to take out their procession in Kashmir Valley. All festivals are celebrated in India in perfect harmony. What do you make of such a statement made by Imam Khamenei?
You see, thank you for inviting me to the show. And personally, I tell you, I'm quite shocked and horrified that a statement coming from a leader who called himself the supreme leader of Iran has to come at the time of Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, on his birthday anniversary.
Yes,
When
yes.
India is celebrating, and when Indians are together, donating blood, standing together with their Hindu brothers, creating goodwill for each other, celebrating. How can you? And he is the great, this is a great promotion of Islamophobia in the world. There is it is totally and completely misinformed and unacceptable to us in India. As a Muslim in this country, I deplore and condemn such remarks coming from such a eminent person, in the Muslim world. And, we do not accept, and I completely agree that India should have given a much more stronger reply, than it has, and it should in the future. And talking about human rights, or what business does it have to talk about human rights? Iran, when you look at the 2020, and you look at look at what they did to this girl,
Yes, we have that entire list on the hijab. On the hijab issue, we've got the entire list of atrocities by Iran on their own people, and especially atrocities on women in Iran. But Sushant Sareen, clearly, if he's the supreme leader of Iran, he cannot be ill-informed. Iran has an embassy in India. There are no restrictions on movement of their diplomats in India. Are we to look at this as some kind of a wider plot to defame India and do, there is an ecosystem in our own country. Is that ecosystem feeding into such a narrative? For example, when Citizenship Amendment Act came in, an ecosystem in our own country called it anti-Muslim. Does that feed into that international narrative, that flawed international narrative?
No, I don't think anybody in the international community takes somebody like a Khamenei very seriously, in the sense, seriously in terms of his trying to take some kind of moral high ground, or pontificate on things like human rights. Because like Mr. Chaukatali is saying, look at their human rights. They have reduced Islam only to hijab. For the mullahs in Iran, Islam is only about hijab and, cloistering women. Depriving them of their basic freedoms. So, do we need to take lessons from a guy like him? No. Secondly, let's look at Iran's own track record when it comes to ethnic minorities or sectarian minorities. Look at the treatment which meted out to the Baloch, who are basically Sunnis, in the Sistan-Balochistan province. Look at the treatment which is meted out to the Azeris, who are up north country, right? Look at the kind of treatment these guys mete out to the Kurds. So, are we now going to take lessons from this fellow, this old man? Number one. Number two. Number three, you are right. He is the supreme leader. He is not entirely ill-informed. But I think, targeting India, which is not a Muslim country, which has a Muslim population, it's a soft target. It's somebody you can do what you are doing without any major pushback coming from India's side. They don't expect a pushback. So they think they can get away scot-free. They can do their virtue signaling, and that's it. It's costless, right?
All of you felt that India should have been stronger in our response. Now, in diplomacy, you often read between the lines. When India is being clubbed with Gaza and with Myanmar, is Iran, one, upset with our multi-alignment? Two, is Iran upset with our relationship with Israel? Why would, I still can't understand, why would Iran, knowing how well respected and how well treated Shia Muslims are in India, perhaps the only country, he's looking at what's happening in his neighboring Pakistan, the way Shia mosques are being demolished and the way Shias are being attacked there, why would he say something as bizarre as what he did?
Because of the fact that he looks at everything through the prism of Islamic values and what he thinks are the interests of Iran. Now, very frankly, Iran is hated by its own neighbors. All the neighbors of Iran in the Gulf are suspicious of Iran because they are afraid that it is trying to overthrow their governments, etc. So nobody likes Iran in that region. Now, what Imam Khamenei has said is downright mischievous. Firstly, it provokes Muslim sentiment in India against the government. Secondly, it also provokes Muslim sentiment in other countries to think that India is against Islam. We do not need a certificate from Khamenei. Our own Muslims are proof of the fact that India is not tolerant. It is very encouraging towards Muslims. See, in all walks of life, we have had presidents of India, we have had chief justices of India, we have had Muslims succeeding in all areas of activity.
Look at the decades of conflict between Shias and Sunnis in Iran and Iraq, or Iraq and Syria. His own backyard is burning, and he's pontificating and pointing fingers to India at a time when he's deporting some 2 million Afghans back to Afghanistan.
That's right.
Yeah, so look, Gaurav, at one level, Iran under these mullahs is basically Taliban light. Okay, women have some freedoms, they can go out, but like I said, they've reduced Islam to a hijab, and the kind of brutal treatment which is meted out to women for as little as, even if some hair are shown, the religious police comes and beats up people. So I don't even want to talk about the kind of system they have. Secondly, and I think more importantly, I think there is a tussle within the Islamic world which is going on for who will take the mantle of leadership of the Islamic world. So there is, of course, Saudi Arabia with Mohammed bin Salman, and along with the UAE, very enlightened leadership, very progressive, looking forward, trying to take their societies into the modern world. You have Turkey with a wannabe caliph in this fellow Erdogan, but he has messed up big time, and now, after all his grandstanding, he has to go on his knees all over the place to try and beg for forgiveness. And then you have Iran, which is also making a play, but they have that their Shia majorityism goes against them, number one. Number two, they have only war and conflict to offer. So whether it's in Lebanon, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Yemen, they have now started affecting international shipping. They are, the most destabilizing factor in the Middle East. So for a guy who's presiding over a regime like that, for him to talk about India, which is, a bulwark of stability in the region, I don't know. Maybe it is actually senility. Who knows?
To all my guests, Sushant Sareen, Zeenat Shaukat Ali, and Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, many thanks for joining me here on this India First special. Clearly, one, India needs no certificates. Two, if Imam Khamenei is talking about this Islamic Ummah and he's so concerned about the plight of the Rohingya Muslims, what's happening in Myanmar, or what's happening in Afghanistan, or what's happening in Pakistan, let him open his borders for those displaced Rohingyas and not send back the 2 million Afghans that he is. We'll be tracking the story very, very closely. That is all I have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.